It is week 13, and for those of us in normal 18-team Guillotine leagues, this is the most important part of the year. Some of those 12, 14-team leagues probably already ending, but for the regular leagues out there, this is when it gets very interesting. Now, to address a couple things, first of all, the background. I'm going to be traveling the next couple of weeks. This is my parents' house, so appreciate you guys understanding all the differences in background and me bringing the mic across the country. And then also, for these couple weeks, the whole game is going to be very different. Obviously, the FAAB guide's set up to give you rough values across the board, but going to be very, very different based on your league's situation and the FAAB amounts. And the FAAB guide does a good job of giving a rough estimate as to what those values should be, but really it's going to be very, very personalized based on your league situation. And so you can still use the FAAB guide and you can still go in and customize it. Again, completely free, should be pretty easy to use. Um, right now, I think a lot of teams probably lower than this number, 217. But that being said, still good to check out, still good to get comparative values and see where players are ranked, how long you should be starting them till. Still a very useful tool, but I'm going to be doing more personal breakdowns. I'm going to be doing that on Reddit. I'm going to be doing that on our Discord. Both should be linked in the description. And I'm also happy to answer any comments or questions you have on this YouTube video as well. That being said, let's jump right into the team breakdowns. Well, also one more comment. I'll throw in that attached to this video, I'm also going to link a video breaking down how to address different FAAB situations, whether you have a lot of FAAB left, whether you are middle of the pack, whether you have 0, 1% of your FAAB remaining, and what you should do in each situation. So definitely check that out as well, but let's jump into the team breakdowns. Starting off with the Detroit Lions playing the New York Giants. This was a competitive game. A lot of Jameis Winston fun highlights in this one. And the big story is two things. Not only did Jahmyr Gibbs have a career day, putting up 55 fantasy points in this one, but we also saw that kind of hurt the rest of the team. And one player in specific that I saw in a couple leagues still barely starting was Jameson Williams. Jameson Williams is the antithesis of what we want in Guillotine leagues. He is a boomer bust player. We don't need to win our weeks. We need to survive our weeks. He's a player who put up, I think, about 23 points last week and now puts up 0 this week. This is simply not the type of player we want to be starting, so hopefully you weren't. He's likely to hit waivers in a lot of leagues if anyone was starting him. Hopefully he's on your bench or on waivers in some capacity. And if he does hit waivers this week, maybe worth a bench stash, maybe worth 1%, but I just don't think he's a player we want to be starting at all in this format. And so I'd almost leave that as a quote-unquote landmine for another manager to have to deal with. And so even though this Lions offense is going to be good and Jahmyr Gibbs might be a top 3 running back moving forward, Amon-Ra St. Brown's still a viable option. Jameson Williams is one we want to move on from. And then moving into the Steelers-Bears game, fairly competitive given that Mason Rudolph is starting in this one. And I want to talk about the running game a little bit. DeAndre Swift, not a very productive day, just 1.9 points total, 8 carries for 15 yards, got out-touched by Kyle Monangai straight up. Kyle Monangai also getting a touchdown in this one. I think Swift is already someone that we should not have been starting. Split backfield on a so-so offense, maybe a good offense. But with losing more and more of his touches to Kyle Monangai as the season goes on, I think his upside is severely capped. Again, hopefully you weren't starting him. Maybe some managers were. If he is to hit waivers at this point in the season, he's not a player I'm looking to add. You can bid 0% on him to potentially bench stash him, but the FAAB guide says that we should have stopped starting him around week 10 or week 11, and Jameson Williams as well around that time. So now heading into week 13, we should be moving on from both of those players. And then moving into this Ravens-Jets game, we saw a lot of good quarterbacks this week really struggle. And first here is Lamar. Lamar Jackson put up about 7 points this week, which was really rough considering a lot of people went out and spent on him to be their quarterback and they can start for the rest of the season. And I still think you can, but now with a lot more hesitation than before. Prior to this week, I viewed Lamar as maybe the QB2 moving forward, and now he has to be in consideration of the QB4, 5 even. And again, that's still a player you can start moving into future weeks, but now is someone that you might look to upgrade, or maybe you look to have a QB room of Lamar and May, Lamar and Hurts, and then pick based on a weekly matchup, or maybe give Lamar some time to wait and see. I don't doubt that Lamar still has an insane rushing upside, an insane ceiling, and is still very, very startable in these guillotine formats. but it is concerning to see back-to-back poor performances from him. If he does hit waivers, which I think he will in a bunch of leagues, I'd be bidding in that elite QB tier where we are around the 5 to 7% FAAB. I know it sounds cheap. We've mentioned this before. Quarterbacks are just ultimately super replaceable and matchup dependent. And so someone we want to go get, but also not at the same time someone we want to overspend on. Moving forward, we have the Texans Bills. And again, just want to highlight the quarterbacks here. Josh Allen had a pretty good day. Not as great of a day as some of his previous performances. He did outscore Lamar. He put up 10 points this week. And I think he's going to be in that same category in the sense that we want to be bidding about 5 to 7% on him. But the only difference is that I still have Josh Allen as my QB1 for the rest of the season and moving forward. So I wouldn't be worried about creating a QB room around him. I would definitely be a little bit more worried about matchups, considering that Texans defense, very difficult matchup. And after seeing this game, realize that it's something we definitely got to worry about. So maybe a little bit more matchup dependent moving forward, but someone I think you could start every single week through the championship. So I think 5 to 7% seems about fair on him. Moving on, we have the Eagles and Cowboys. A very surprising game, a very fun one to watch. One player I want to talk about here is going to be Dallas Goedert. I think a lot of the other options in this game, including Hurts, Barkley, Adrian Devonta, actually had decent games, which is maybe our first time in a while that has happened. And so Goddard was the piece left out here. Goddard just put up 4 points. And ultimately, I don't think Goddard is someone we want to be starting much longer. Let's check the FAAB guide here, just as an example. Dallas Goedert, tight end 9 moving forward, thus can be started through week 11. Yeah, ultimately, again, if we're in week 13, that means it's not really someone we want to be looking to start. We want to be looking to upgrade into one of these more elite options that have the upside of starting until the year championship year. So let's find that game. Yeah, I think Dallas Goedert is someone we want to move on from. Also doesn't represent a lot of upside in that offense. So if you want him as a fill-in for maybe 1% of your FAAB, then great. But we should really be looking to move on from him as well. Hopefully you're sensing a theme from this. This is just your Jameson Williams, DeAndre Swift, Dallas Goedert, all these players who are good but not elite. Now that we are in effectively like 6-team leagues, those are just not startable players. And so as much as they are notable names and players you recognize, they are players that should not be starting anymore. In this one, we're looking at Alvin Kamara. Alvin Kamara got injured in this game. I'm actually not sure about the length of his injury. Devin Neal did fairly well in his replacement. Taysom Hill got a bunch of touches in this one. And I think similar to the other guys, Alvin Kamara is probably not someone we wanted to be starting prior to the injury. And now with any injury concerns, I think we need to move on from him. The FAAB guide listed him as someone we can start through week 9. The Saints offense has been pretty abysmal, and so he represents very little upside. And so again, this is someone we want to probably move on from, probably not even worth the bench stash. Moving forward, we had another close game in the Colts Chiefs, and the player I want to talk about here is Jonathan Taylor. Jonathan Taylor has been a very interesting situation this year. He's had the highest of ceilings and also a couple floor games. This one was one of his lower ones, put up 8 points. Pretty solid day, all things considered, but really would love to see more touchdowns and the receiving game. But again, this is going to be some natural variance here. 8 points doesn't worry me about his future value. I think he's still going to be the RB called 3 moving forward. And so that said, if he does hit waivers, which he will in a bunch of leagues, I think he's someone you want to go get. RB3 is someone you can start through week 17. And I think for elite players now, we're probably looking around the 9 to 12% of your original FAAB range. It's going to be tough. There's going to be some teams who might have more FAAB. Again, this is where it becomes really situational. Maybe 9 to 12% is an overpay. Maybe it's an underpay. Really going to dramatically depend on your league situation. So again, check out the other video I posted for that one and more advice on that. Moving forward, we have the Vikings and Packers. The player I want to talk about here is Justin Jefferson. This is a tough situation. Just last week, Justin Jefferson was ranked inside the top 6 receivers for the rest of the season. And now I think he's pushing down to around the wide receiver 10 for rest of season range. Look at him down there. Wide receiver 13, startable through week 14. Again, week 14, very, very solid. That gives you another week or two with a little bit of upside to move forward into that week 15 range. So he's definitely a player you still want to acquire, and he has upside. He's an elite talent and the number 1 in that offense. But A player I'd be very, very worried about starting. JJ McCarthy entered concussion protocol, which may be a good thing, maybe a bad thing. Not really sure. Um, I think Justin Jefferson actually performed a little bit better with, I believe it was Carson Wentz under center earlier this season. So Justin Jefferson, a player I'd still look to acquire, not super aggressively, but someone that you could definitely plug and play immediately. I'd be bidding around the somewhere in the 7 to 9% range. It's fairly aggressive for a guy that, at least listed on the FAAB guide, might only start on your team for about 2 more weeks. But again, I think he's the upside to start later than that, to push into the weeks 15 or 16. And then ultimately, I think he's a player you'd love to have on your bench for the championship week, where you don't risk starting him, but you also don't risk the other player taking that risk and having the upside of Justin Jefferson. So he's still a player I want to go get. Moving forward, we have the Bengals and Patriots game. The player I want to talk about here was, let's go down to receiving, Stephon Diggs. Stephon Diggs has been incredible this season, probably around the wide receiver 15-ish range. Diggs didn't have a great performance in this one, just 4 points, 2 receptions, 20 yards. This was a little bit of variance. I mean, it's not a great matchup, so that was a little bit disappointing to see. Or it was not a great matchup, so it was disappointing to see that he didn't perform well. That said, again, we can check out the FAAB guide. Again, even if not just for the values, to see relative where he sits and how long we can be starting him. And so Stephon Diggs at wide receiver 15, similar to Jefferson, around that wide receiver, that week 14, that we can keep starting him. Maybe it's a little bit more downside to move down into this 13 to 14 range rather than to move up significantly at least. And so he's a player I still want to be bidding on. Definitely less aggressively than Jefferson. Jefferson I had around the 7 to 9% range. Diggs I might have in the lower, call it 5 to 6% range. And then moving on, we have the Rams-Buccaneers game. This was a super interesting one. Rams immediately jumped out to a very fast start. Baker Mayfield got injured in this one. And so starting with that, Baker Mayfield, not, again, 100% sure of the extent of his injury. All I saw about an hour before recording this was that he did receive positive news on an MRI. So hopefully not too worried about him moving forward. Teddy Bridgewater did not look great, so we're hoping not to see him in future weeks. And that's super important for Emeka Egbuka. I think that Sean Tucker, Rachaad White should not be starting, and Emeka Egbuka did not have a great day. So I think it's important to talk about him. Put up 6.2 points, but is in that Justin Jefferson tier where he's probably starting until week 14 based on his current ranking, but has the upside to start into weeks 15 or 16, and probably not in your championship week. But again, a great bench stash just in case you are preventing your opponent from a 3-touchdown performance or something. So that being said, I think Egbuka did the exact same on Jefferson, around that 7 to 9% range. Again, varies incredibly depending on your league situation, but he's a player I want to go get. And then Kyren Williams on this Rams side of things, still led the team in carries, 12 carries, just no touchdowns and not super involved. In the receiving game, just one reception for 2 yards. So ultimately, put up about 5.8 points. The FAAB guide says he's startable through about week 15. That's a solid flex option for, again, the next couple of weeks. Still a player I'd look to go get. Still has upside based on the fact that this Rams team has been incredible. And so I would be bidding around the 6 to 8% range on him. A little bit less upside than your Justin Jefferson and Emeka Egbuka, but still a player that's going to be a really, really solid contributor to your team and give you a fairly high floor. I'd argue that this 5.8 point performance was about that floor. All right, and then moving into some players that were on bye or maybe out this week, starting with Jamar Chase, who was on suspension this week. Jamar Chase, he is wide receiver 3 moving forward, a player you can for sure start in your championship week and definitely don't want to be matched up against. If he hits your waivers, which he will in a bunch of leagues, I'd be bidding super aggressively to go get him. As mentioned with Jonathan Taylor earlier, I have 9 to 12% as my elite player range right now, and I'd be the exact same on Jamar Chase. Looking at a running back here, I want to talk about Bucky Irving. Bucky Irving has been injured for seemingly the whole year. Had a couple good games before he went down to injury. He can start until week 13. That's a tough one. If he comes back and he looks great, then he will certainly boost up the rankings and be able to start until later. But you don't want to really start him the first week back from injury, whenever that may be, just based on how bad it's lingered and how Sean Tucker and Rachaad White have both had very significant games this season. So Bucky is someone I would be willing to stash for his upside. I'd be willing to bid maybe 3-ish% on him, but he's not someone we're going to be starting in the championship week. Might not be someone we're starting sooner, So he represents this really weird middle tier of player. It's really disappointing he hasn't come back sooner, but I'd probably be in about the 1 to 2% range on him, and maybe even into the 3% just for a bench stash. Excuse me. And then a player I have to scroll all the way down to get here is going to be Drake London. This is incredibly disappointing. He might miss more games this season. Kirk Cousins does not look good, and Michael Penix is out for the rest of the season. So this situation is just immediately fallen off a cliff. Despite Drake London being listed here for between 2 to 5%, call it, I'd be looking around the 5 or 6% range on him. Drake London has a ton of upside. Even despite Kirk Cousins, he might just get peppered with targets, which is especially valuable if your Guillotine leagues PPR. So despite him showing and starting until week 11, I think he has upside that maybe a Zay Flowers, Michael Pittman does not have, to immediately jump back into that like top 10-ish range. The big thing is you're going to have to monitor the injury news on him. That can change quite literally at any time of the day. So as we're recording this, it's not looking good. So maybe you don't bid as aggressively there. But if things start to trend up, he's a player you'd love to bench stash moving into the championship weeks. And then we got Devon Achane on bye. Running back 4 moving forward. Fantasy Pros even has him above Bijan Robinson. That's a very interesting call. I don't know that I'd agree. But regardless, all players you can start until week 17. So if Achane's on waivers because someone wasn't able to survive the bye, he's a player I'd look to go and aggressively get. Maybe slightly less than that elite 9 to 12%, but maybe in that 8 to 10 or 8 to 11% range, right below, again, the Jonathan Taylors of the world. So the Dolphins offense is not great, but I think he still has a very, very high floor, super involved in that offense, lots of passing work. So going to be incredibly valuable in any PPR leagues. So definitely look to acquire him, but I might not value him nearly as much as the Bijan, JT, CMC, or Gibbs of the world. Right firmly in that tier, maybe below. And then we can move forward. Courtland Sutton was a player I wanted to talk about. Courtland Sutton coming off his bye with the Broncos. Broncos have been an incredibly good team, but Sutton has not looked great this season. If Sutton hits waivers this week, I don't know that I'd be starting him in any future week. I just can't imagine a situation in which I would be. It would probably have to require a fantastic performance this week and an easy matchup next week. And so with that in mind, I don't think he's worth all that much right now. Probably a 0 to 1% bid and a bench stash if you'd like. Even though these values are here, I think that his upside isn't severely capped. And so I would not be bidding aggressively to go get Courtland Sutton. I feel the same way about some other of these like Broncos, Chargers, and Commanders that were on bye this week. I feel a little bit more positively about Ladd McConkey. Ladd listed up here as wide receiver 11. I feel a little bit softer about him in this format and that he doesn't represent a huge upside. There's a lot of targets and a lot going on in that Chargers offense. But I would look to go get him if you can start him until week 15. You can bid around the 4 to 6% range on him on the lower end, and I feel very good about that. I'd rather the guys around him and Jefferson, Collins, and Igbuka just because of their upside. But Ladd McConkey, very, very stable and solid option that I would look to add if he hits your waivers. Another Charger here. Let's do a Marion Hampton. Not sure how far down we'll scroll and get him. All right, here he is. Running back 20. Startable until week 11. Not great. And similar to Bucky, I don't know if he's someone we want to start coming off the injury. We don't know if he's going to be the RB1 right away or if he's going to be splitting time with Kamani Vidal. Maybe he's worth a bench stash if you believe in this offense. Maybe, again, that 1 to 2% bid. But certainly not anything significant to get a player who I just don't think should be starting in your roster moving forward. You're going to be able to get a lot cheaper replacements with the likes of an Etienne or a Henderson or a Jacobs because of the injury. And those are players I would all significantly rather to Marion Hampton, even if it requires me to pay up a little bit for them. And then lastly, just to go through a couple here. Herbert can start till week 11, was on bye this week. Because again, moving to week 13, does he represent upside? To me, not really. So I would be looking to just drop Herbert. I don't think he's worth the bench stash because of the lack of upside. Same thing goes for Jaden Daniels. Right down here is QB 21. We don't know if he's going to start again this season. I'm going to lean that he might not. He might only come back for a game or two, and by that time, again, he's just not someone you're going to start. So ultimately, probably not worth it. Probably not even worth the bench stash. And then lastly, I don't know if we'll be able to find him, but Terry McLaurin, I don't think He has much upside. He's been dealing with injuries. Jaden Daniels might not return. I can barely even find him on this sheet, listed as wide receiver 44, startable to week 4. Obviously, that's not totally true in the sense that if he returns and looks good, he'll skyrocket up. But I don't think that up is startable at this point in the year. So a couple guys that I would also drop or leave on the bench if you have them. So ultimately, that should do it. A lot of notes, a lot of things going on. It's a busy time of year. So again, if you have any personalized just league comments, leave them down there in the YouTube comments. Reach out to me on Discord. I'll typically respond there a little bit faster. And yeah, ultimately, good luck and keep on surviving.